Good. Okay, fantastic. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners. The meeting is taking place in Room 1A of the Davy Crockett Tower at 500 James Robertson Parkway in Nashville, Tennessee. And notice of this meeting was posted on the board's website on March the 28th, 2016. If you're a guest, please sign in, and the sign-in's up at the podium. So please go ahead and do that so we'll have a record of your attendance. And at this time, I believe we will have, here in just a second, before a roll call.
Susan Ballard.
Here.
Hal Balthrop. Robert Campbell.
Present.
Jerry Headley.
Present.
Philip Lim.
Here.
Bill Lockwood.
Here.
Susan Maynor.
Here.
Rick Thompson.
Here.
Frank Wagster.
Here.
Ricky Bersai.
Here.
Stephen King.
Here.
Laura Reinbold. You have a quorum.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I would like to start now by acknowledging our guests. So I think for the record, please just stand up and say your name and who you're with. So make sure that we get it on tape.
Ashley Pace, AIACC.
Thank you.
Casey Anderson with the American Council of Engineering Companies of Tennessee and the Tennessee Society of Professional Engineers.
Chris Baldy, with Lipscomb University, civil engineering, and
Fantastic. Thanks y'all for being here today. Before we get started, we have a couple new faces with us. We had a voice and now we have a face. But our new public member is Susan Maynor. And Susan, if you don't mind, take 27 seconds and just tell us anything non-embarrassing you want to tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert. I'm Susan Maynor, and I am Vice President of Economic Development at the Memphis Chamber. So this is very interesting for me and what I do in my normal life. So I do appreciate being available.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for having us. And we have a new person labeled staff attorney, and I don't think that's his name. It's Ben Glover. If you don't mind, introduce yourself. And
Morning, everyone. I'm Benjamin Glover. I've been here with the department about 10 months. I also serve the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy, the Division of Consumer Affairs, and about 4 other small programs. Very happy to be here. Thank you all.
thank you very much. And I believe that gets all the formalities and niceties out of the way. John, do we have any announcements?
You've covered the announcements.
Oh, have? Well, good. I did well. I was going to ask you if you wanted to update us on the schedule, because that's what you did, it seemed like, all week last week. So
You can read the agenda.
I'll let you go there. But anyway, you all have the agenda in front of you. Does everybody have an agenda? Make sure that we do. Make sure that you're looking at it. Are there any changes and/or additions to the agenda? Anything? All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you had mentioned earlier about doing committee appointments.
Yes. That's
wanna-
very good. Thank you for reminding me. We will do that. I was going to do that down here where Philip was doing nominations. Yes. So at nominations, we'll talk about a couple committee appointments if I can find it on my list. It's somewhere in here. Here we go. All right, since there are no other changes besides that, we will have the agenda stand with the one amendment for committee assignments down at officer nominations. All right. I don't think I need a motion for that. I think I can do that once I don't see any.
I will move to change the agenda to add that at the
Thank you.
proper location.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Better safe than sorry. Here we go. All right. Consent agenda. John Cothran, please.
Yes, on page 7 at the bottom of your page, or page 10 on your iPads, you have the minutes from the February 2016 board meeting and committee meeting for your approval.
I will move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the minutes are approved. Thank you. Next is staff complaint report.
It's on page 16/19 on your iPads. These are all complaints in which the respondent was disciplined in another jurisdiction. The discipline was less than a suspension or revocation, so in accordance with board policy, we issued a letter of caution and recommend closure, and you can just vote on these as a group.
Would so move to take the staff's recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just a point of information. John, did you require them to take our law and rules exam? They can pass the law exam?
No, because, and Ben could probably speak more to that, this is informal action, a letter of caution, so we can't require them to do that.
That's correct. It's just informal and making a note on their registration that they have been disciplined in another jurisdiction.
Good question. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. All right. And we have our professional society reports, and I told you I would get you out of here in time to go take care of your other business that you need to go take care of this morning. So, Ashley, do you want to start us since you're on my left?
Good morning. I'm Ashley Cates, Executive Vice President of AIA Tennessee. My report is going to be pretty short today. As far as the legislative issues are, they're wrapping up. Session should end within the next week or so, keeping our fingers crossed. The bill the designers, architects, and engineers have been working on, House Bill 1726, Senate Bill 1672, regarding prompt payment and additional services. It's in finance. It passed state and local, and it passed House Utilities and Banking, and it's sitting in finance. We have a $32 million fiscal note on it. It's actually, I think it was reduced to 18.4. In the meantime, we've been working, the state architect pulled all parties together, state procurement agencies and us, and we sat down and had a working session. And it looks like we're going to be adopting a new contract at the April 25th Executive Subcommittee, keeping our fingers crossed. You know, of course, it's negotiated, so it's similar to the contract that we had finalized in May of 2015 that stalled. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, and hopefully in the June meeting, we'll be able to report back to you that we have a new state contract. In addition, the architects are probably next year going to be really interested in public-private legislation, P3, known as P3. Right now, it's the state, of course, passed. It was horizontal, and so next year we're probably going to be working with the state on vertical P3 legislation. So we'll keep you posted on that as well. And they're also interested in Historic Tax Credit Rehabilitation Act, where you can go in and revitalize some urban communities as well as the rural areas. So that's what we're going to be doing probably on the off session. In the meantime, our convention is going to be held in August 24th through 26th in Chattanooga. So we would love to have you all there. I'll send the information to John to get it out to you. And at the meeting, I think this is going to be the second year we will be the Tennessee Architecture Foundation last year provided scholarships to our newly licensed architects, and what we're doing now is we're giving them awards, recognizing them at our President's Luncheon on the last day, and we're giving them some really cool Tennessee awards for their licensure. So we're hoping that promotes licensure, and we're getting out and working that and pushing that. Other than this, I think that's it in a nutshell for AIA Tennessee. Have any questions?
Questions for Ashley? Betty? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Casey?
Good morning, Casey Anderson, ACEC, TSPE. There's been so much legislative stuff going on, but the only thing that I think you all might be interested in that just happened in the last couple of days,
there's been some concern about the UT diversity funding at UT. The beauty of it is somehow it was moved this week, pulled out of the diversity community there and moved into scholarships for engineering students at UT. So I thought that was, at least there's a positive on our side. A number of the appropriations that are up for negotiation with the surplus are to enhance some of the engineering schools around the state as well. Not sure any of them are going to actually go through, but working toward that. So that was a little bit exciting. Our ACEC delegation is doing congressional visits next week, looking at some energy pieces, some tax reform, and continuing to plug away at long-term transportation and pushing QBS into that as well. Also looking at some of the procurement pieces where their short list is at 15 versus 3 to 5. So we're working on some of those issues there. TSPE, which is the Tennessee Society of Professional Engineers, filed a letter of support with the EPA last week, just stressing the importance of having professional engineers on their audit committee, on their audit teams that are now going out to look at what the EPA is doing around the country. So I'll follow up when that is settled at their level. Chris, who is here with ASCE, has asked me to speak June 16th at an ASCE meeting about decoupling. I believe he's asked Hal as well. John, I think, is out of town, but I don't know what the mechanism is for you all, but would love to have some board people there as well. I think they're trying to put together a panel. So June 16th, y'all might want to consider, I don't know the method of that, but thought I'd mention it. The Engineers Conference is going to be September 15th and 16th at the Music City Center. A little more convenient than Murfreesboro for lots of people. We're talking about doing a session the day before for our senior leaders. We also are going to have a leadership PE session, which is our young professionals who are in that class right now. I just, at their last session last month, I did the one day of their class. We spent a good hour on QBS. What we're discovering is our young people really don't know what to do, and by the time something gets to the senior principal, it's a day and a half before the RFQ is due, and it's tough to be going in last minute. So our business practices committee at ACEC is really looking at long term. Let's identify some strategies about both educating the procurement agencies and the municipalities around the state, but also how are we educating the young engineers as they come up, and why that's important, and how to make a difference with that. So we're looking at a couple of different options, but at any point when we do decide, if we start doing day-long sessions for our youngest engineers, we would certainly hope that the board would want to come in and help us with some of those discussions, because we do think it's really an important piece. I think that's all I have, unless y'all have questions.
Did you say the annual meeting was?
15th and 16th is if that's the Thursday, Friday. I would assume of September. I'm sorry. I would assume that we will be asking you all to. I think last year we moved the board discussion to lunch on Friday so that you would not conflict with the TDOT sessions on transportation. That committee is starting to work on all of that. I would assume that we would love to invite some of you to come talk. But I can't say for sure that would be that Friday.
Any questions? I do have one before you sit down. Anybody? You're going to the annual meeting of ACEC next week.
Yes.
And Ashley has just talked about P3.
Yes.
Which is also something in the engineering world that we are also very interested in. And why I say that from a board level is P3, there is probably some confusion on how QBS and how the engineer is procured.
That is our concern, our primary concern. Probably.
Right, and so we will be part of that discussion on the architectural side as well as the engineering side at some point. So any information that you can find on how other states may be handling that procurement process and how QBS is involved in that would be something that this board would be interested in. And I would kind of say the same thing to John. I'm not sure if this is something that may be for a retreat or some other time. Again, looking at some alternative methods, which P3 would be one. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about design build and see how QBS is brought into some of these new methods that seem to be coming up and picking up a lot of steam across the nation.
I would say the same thing for the privatization piece that is being considered by the state right now. Ashley and I, in the course of the last year, have met with from everyone from the deputy governor down to city councilmen about our concerns with what privatization could do potentially to QBS in those procurements. And everyone says that's not why we're doing it, but it is an unintended consequence, perhaps. So we're looking at that really carefully. I will add that the state execs for ACEC, we spend I would say we have a total of about 10 hours in the next 6 days together. And one of the topics for discussion is QBS. There are some states that are trying to strengthen their laws right now. There are a few that don't have laws right now that are trying to put them in place. And there are others who are struggling the same way we are with little loopholes in there that, little kind of workarounds that probably need to be tightened up. So that's absolutely part of the discussion. And I agree that P3 ought to be in there too. Thanks.
Anything else from anybody? All right, thank you very much, Casey, appreciate it. See, Don, you're here. I'm gonna need you to sign in if you're gonna speak and state for the record so that we got you on tape, please.
I leave here. Good morning. I am Don Baltimore, representing the interior designers of Tennessee, and thank you for asking me to speak today. We are following all of the legislation affecting this board and interior designers, architects, and engineers. And on the design contracts with the state, we have been assisting on that, and we have been mainly on the bench waving yes when asked, and are helping as requested and speaking to what legislators that we are asked to speak to. So that's really pretty much our goal this year, and watching the others. We've got the sunset law passed, thank goodness, as everyone knows. And then the only other thing is, and I'm just raising a red flag, is probably John would be more concerned. There's a bill that's caught our attention, the Right to Earn a Living Act, Senate Bill 2469 and House Bill 2201, that just seems to have moved. It passed the Senate and is in the House Finance, and that it appears from the reading of it that it requires state agencies and boards and commissions to justify, as I read it every year, why there is regulations for professions. In other words, justify why you're keeping out others. I don't know how much that's going to move. What do we need to do about it? We're just kind of talking about it some. It's, as I understand, it's a bill from the Americans for Prosperity. So I don't know how this is going to affect. It looks like it puts a lot of burden on state agencies to give those regulations, but I guess it'll take time on interpretation. So I just wanted to raise that flag, and as we'll just see where it goes from here, and if there are any more amendments to the bill. So any questions?
Questions, anybody? Good. All right, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next on our agenda, Benjamin has our legal case report, please.
Morning. We've got 3 cases to discuss today. First, let me apologize for having the wrong date on here. I will amend that upstairs. It seems I was a bit eager for the weekend when I wrote this.
Tell them where it is on their iPad.
I don't know what that would be.
Let's see. Oh. It's on page 19 or 22 on your iPads. Sorry.
Thank you.
Make sure you had that.
Thank you, John. First case, 2016-007-411. A registrant, the complainant, sent in a letter to the board staff indicating concerns that the respondent may have been engaging in plan stamping for a Florida company. The complainant based his allegation on a conversation with the Florida company as to who does their designs, and the company stated that it did not know who did the designs and had no designers on staff. The complaint was then sent to investigation and review. The investigation and review uncovered the following facts. The respondent is properly registered in Tennessee and works on designs for an original manufacturer here in Tennessee. The respondent provided design calculations for the plans in question and appears to be in direct charge of his work product. The Florida company is a reseller of buildings, including some designs from a Tennessee original manufacturer of whom the respondent works for, and the Florida company does not actually perform design services. There is no history of discipline with this particular registrant, and the recommendation from legal is to close the complaint.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. Is there any
Move to close.
discussion? Okay.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Y'all gotta let me get these words out of my mouth, man. They build up momentum in here, and it's hard for them to stop.
When you review them, they just go quickly.
Okay, well, good. That makes, it should make you all pause for concern, but whatever. All right, any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, ayes have it. Let's go to the next one, please.
Second case is number 2016003001. On or about January 25th, 2016, board staff discovered that the respondent's Colorado architectural license was revoked for 1 year in February 2015 and opened up this complaint. After notification of this complaint, the respondent sent in full documentation of that disciplinary action, including an initial decision for the 1 year revocation. In the findings of fact of the initial decision, the administrative judge found that respondent failed to submit the requisite PDH when respondent renewed in 2013. The initial decision was executed by the judge on February 24, 2015. Respondent did not provide any evidence that would indicate that respondent properly notified the board of this disciplinary action within 60 days of the action pursuant to Rule 0120-02-.07, parenthetical 5, parenthetical B. There's no history of discipline in this state with regards to this particular respondent. The recommendation is a consent order with a $500 civil penalty, an automatic audit of continuing education hours for the next license renewal period, and take and pass the law and rules exam within 90 days of execution of the consent order.
All right. Is there any comments?
Good job.
Motion.
What's your motion?
Motion is to accept recommendation from our attorney.
Second.
Any discussion, questions?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Was this his home state by any chance? Do we know that?
No, sir, it is not.
Okay, but just curious. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
One other
Mr. Lamb.
question I have is, Mr. Glover, is the $500 silver penalty, is it consistent with our fee schedule or fine
Yes,
schedule?
sir, I believe so.
Thank you.
I believe it's the lower end.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And the ayes have it. Next case, please.
Our third case to report on today is number 2016018741. On March 28, 2016, the respondent self-reported a felony conviction for a nonviolent first-degree assault and battery for inappropriate physical contact with a minor. In February 2014, the respondent went to the authorities and confessed. Respondent pled guilty and was sentenced in December 2014 to 30 months of incarceration. Respondent served 15 months and was released on March 1st, 2016. Respondent asserts that his incarceration and lack of communication with the outside world for the first several months prevented and hindered any prior timely notification of the conviction to the board. There's no indication that the assault occurred in the performance of professional services or was in any way related to the respondent's practice. There's no history of discipline. The recommendation is a consent order with $500 civil penalty and take and pass the laws and rules exam within 90 days of the execution of this consent order.
All right, is there any comments? All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Get a second? Okay, any discussion? Get started, Mr. Thompson.
Another question, and this is, as a felony, it is within our authority to not suspend the license, and this seems like an appropriate fine. Is everyone in agreement with the $500 fine? Okay.
I mean, I'm looking around. I don't see anybody.
Yeah, I'm just making sure that nobody objects to if it's too small or whatever. I'm fine with it. I'm just asking a question.
Okay, good
Thank you.
question. Any more discussion? All right, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And the ayes again have it. Thank you very much.
Thank
Our next one is the director's report, Mr. Cawthorn, and I think you start with complaint data.
Before I get to the complaint data, I just have a few other things to mention about national council meetings. First off, Jerry Headley attended the Southern Conference of NCARB Educators Conference in New Orleans on February the 13th. Frank Wagster, Jerry Headley, and I attended the NCARB Regional Summit in Savannah, Georgia on March 10th through the 12th, and there is a written report later on the agenda on that meeting. The engineer members and several staff attended the NCAAS Southern Zone meeting in Nashville last week, April 7th through the 9th. Had a good meeting, about 140 were in attendance, and the engineers did meet briefly with the surveyors board prior to that meeting. Also, representatives from NCARB are expected to attend the June board meeting, so just want to make you aware of that I'm in the process of getting that scheduled, so that they are planning to sit in on our board meeting and probably have dinner with the architects beforehand. So I'll be looking forward to that. As far as outreach efforts, been fairly busy lately. Ricky Bursai and I delivered presentations to engineering students at the University of Memphis on February the 16th. I think there were actually two presentations that day, one to a class and the other to a larger group. And the one to the larger group, we were assisted by Mike Bilderbeck and Tim Herndon, correct? Who are engineers in that area. So did you want to make any comments on that, Ricky? Or?
They were well attended. We probably spoke to 25 or 30 in the class and probably 50 or 60 to the larger group, something like that.
That was a very good event. And I also attended the UT Knoxville College of Architecture and Design Career Day on February 26th. Didn't have a lot of students purposefully come to and stop at my table, so I had to go out and grab students and give them information about registration, which was well received. They were certainly happy to get that information, but I think most of them, their focus was on finding jobs after they graduate, so they weren't seeking me out. I had to go seek them out. But I think it was a very good event and gave out a lot of good information that day. I also participated in a panel discussion on licensure at an AIA Middle Tennessee chapter meeting in Nashville on March the 24th, and that was moderated by Harry Falconer of NCARB. And for administrative issues, we are continuing to develop online applications. I think I mentioned that to you previously. So we're trying to move away from the paper forms that have to be mailed in with a check or a money order, where they can just apply for their license online. Of course, we've had online renewals for many years, since 2006, but hopefully by June, that's the target date, the end of June, we'll have online applications as well, and we can be completely paperless. Well, mostly paperless at that point. We'll still get some things on paper, like reference forms and transcripts, but for the most part, it'll be paperless. And I'm still working on the next edition of the board's newsletter. I've been waiting on our proposed rules to be filed with the Secretary of State. We'll have an update on that a little later when we get to action items. And that's it for those items. Now we can look at complaint data. And
John, wait just a second.
Sorry,
We've
go
got a
ahead.
question from Philip.
Since we're on the subject on design, I would assume that you're going to at least have a column to introduce our new public member and also our new attorney. On the newsletter.
Oh, right, in the
To
newsletter.
formally,
Yes, that's going to be
introduce
announced
them.
in the newsletter. You're correct.
So it's going to be out there, right?
Yeah, it will be, yeah.
So take good picture, man, Ben. Thank you.
Oh, you
Thank
want a
you.
picture? Okay. You do have a list of all of our open complaints as of April the 12th on page 17 or page 20 on your iPads, depending on which page number you're consulting. At that point, we had 20 open complaints. All of them have had clock stopping action if they're 180 days old or more. One is authorized to be heard by an administrative law judge. And our percent on time in the last 18 months is 98%, which is well above our 80% goal. So our metrics are looking good for complaints.
John, at our last hearing in August, has that particular
situation? Have we gotten our payment from him?
No, not at this point, we haven't. Not yet. And I believe the consent order calls for suspension for non-payment, so, yeah, that will occur if we don't receive the civil penalty. And financial data,
Before you go, do you anticipate, and this is so I know which board meeting to skip if we're going to have another one of these trials. That's just a joke. It's a joke. When do you think it says this one referred to litigation, is that something that's going to happen later in the year, or do you anticipate it when?
well, that's one that can be heard by an administrative law
Okay.
judge, the one in litigation, because it involves reciprocal action.
Okay.
So, yeah, y'all had actually authorized a few years ago that those could be heard by an ALJ, as well as privilege tax cases, which we don't deal with anymore, but
Okay.
at any rate, so y'all won't have to deal with that one, thankfully.
Okay.
I'm sure you're relieved about that. Okay, financial data begins on page 21 or 24 on your iPads, and then you have the reports with the details behind that. But just to give you an overview, our licensing revenue is down for this quarter. This would be for the second quarter of the year, fiscal year October through December of last year. Revenue is down for this quarter versus the previous fiscal year's corresponding quarter, but that's because we sent out all those early renewal notices before we went to our new licensing system. So we had a lot of people renew in June and July, and that's reduced our revenue in the later months of the year. So I do expect our revenue to normalize in the third quarter. It should be consistent with what it's been in the past. So we actually haven't seen a decrease in revenue. It's just the money's been paid earlier than it normally has been from the early renewals that we've had. And as far as expenses, I think everything's consistent with what it's been in the past. Our personal services expenditures, staff salaries are down somewhat because we had an employee retire last year. And the only unusual thing is you'll notice that we did receive some refunds of grant money, $17,849 in refunds. That's actually from Tennessee State University, some money that they had that was unused. It was over, I think, 2 fiscal years, some money that they had not used that they refunded to us. So that's a little unusual. We've had that before, but we don't see it too often. And I think, unless you have any questions, that's all I have for the financial data.
Hey, John, so what you do with the 17,849? Go back to general fund or go back to my grant money?
It goes back to our fund. Yeah, it's
the general
counted
fund,
as
so it means
like revenue,
it doesn't
basically.
and it doesn't increase the allocation for this coming year.
No, it doesn't, no. It's just considered revenue, I think, pretty much.
Is that included in the 40,000 or 41,000 that was extra funds that was in your other report?
Oh, this is grant money that was expended in previous fiscal years. Yeah, it's not for this year's grant.
So we did say, because I know the grant committee met this morning, and is there something we need to maybe visit with Dr. Keith Hargrove at the TSU, have a talk with him, or I'd like to encourage them to spend the money for the student. That's why we work hard to get the money to them. So I'd like,
Not
Mr.
sure
Chairman,
what all
I'd
the
like at least the grant
circumstances
committee to reach out to them. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Good suggestion, and I think Grants Committee, since you're the chair, I think that'd be something for you all to take up at your next session, no doubt. Any other questions about the financials? All right, thank you, John. And now you have is that it?
Legislative update.
That's what I was gonna say, yeah. I was heading in that direction.
Yep. All right, legislative update. That's on page 34 or 31 on your iPads. Now, one bill from last year that I'll bring to your attention is Senate Bill 556, House Bill 678. That was one to phase out the privilege tax that we thought was dead, but it was revived in the Senate. It was passed with an amendment directing the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations, TACIR, I love that acronym, to study and make recommendations relative to the privilege tax by January 1st of next year. So it's sort of been revived. I mean, we'll see what their recommendations are, but. And in the House, it's in the Finance Ways and Means Subcommittee, so it hasn't passed both houses, but it has passed in the Senate. Our sunset legislation, Senate Bill 1503, House Bill 1615 has passed, so we have been extended to June 30th, 2020, but it did amend our statute to establish minimum attendance requirements for board members. You're now required by statute to attend at least half of the scheduled meetings in a calendar year. I think it says calendar year, I believe.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
If you do not attend 50%, then you will be, I believe, automatically removed from the board.
And we have 6 meetings a year typically, so, right, if you miss 3, or, wait a minute, 4.
If you miss more than 3.
More than 3, right.
Yes, sir, Jerry.
John, and missing half board meetings, what if, for people that do the call-in, that's still considered attending?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Rick.
I'm assuming that's inexcused or unexcused misses, or is that automatic if you've got to go to the hospital?
I don't know that there's any sort of differentiation between what sort of reason you had for missing the particular meeting. With the ability to call in and attend the meetings telephonically, I think that should rectify any sort of most problems. If you're in the hospital, I mean, surely, that would be understood as to why you would not be attending. And if you're in the hospital for 6 months and could not attend, with any luck, you'd be able to phone in once or twice.
Unless you're comatose, and then you
And
don't
in
need
that
to be on the board.
it might be good to.
I get it.
It might be good to not be on the board if you're comatose.
Have the hospital staff call in, and you'd be connected, but you may not say anything.
All right, Susan.
You want to go by Ben or Mr. Glover? Let me start there first.
Whatever you want.
Okay, Ben. I think it would be helpful for this board to know if there were stipulations, just like Rick brought up, I've had to call in twice in 4 years. He's had surgery, those kind of things, just to make sure.
I'd
that
be
we
happy to
understand.
look into that,
Okay.
but this would, I can tell you right now that the telephonic, if you attended telephonically, that would count as attending the meeting.
Okay.
So there's that.
But there's deaths in the family, there are surgeries, there are
Certainly,
things
understood.
like that we can't avoid
I
as
don't-
human beings, so I'm just curious.
I understand. I don't know of any thing that would excuse an absence, so to speak. There may very well be something out there. I'd be happy to look into that and report back in June.
Just for information's sake. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Rick.
Hypothetically, somebody misses 3 of the 6 meetings. Who's the meeting police officer?
I believe that, we probably would have to notify the governor's office.
Who's we?
The governor's office, my guess would be me. I wouldn't necessarily call myself the meeting police officer, but
Well, I would.
you'd have to, I don't.
I mean,
think
would
it's-
that be just because you wanted to, or you think you need to,
The
or is that a
statute
request
says-
of John, or what is that?
I'll read you the statute verbatim. It says, notwithstanding subdivision B1, any member who misses more than 50% of the scheduled meetings in a calendar year shall be removed as a member of the board. That's what the new statute says. I can look into that. I don't think that we'd have to worry about it until someone misses 3 meetings in a calendar year, and then we can say, hey, look, you've got one more.
Yeah. Okay.
When does that take effect?
It already has.
First meeting you missed.
And to be clear, that's something that was passed that's a Tennessee Code annotated?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's in the law. It's not like a rule or something that we have.
It's in our statute, right?
Yep, so, okay.
All right.
Any other questions? You all had discussion like you all were planning on missing a bunch of meetings or something.
No, I'm just looking out for you, Ron.
I understand. Well, Hal's already and Laura are already on the clock, right?
That's right. Laura's missed 1 meeting.
All right. Other legislation, John?
Oh, okay. Continuing Senate Bill 2535, House Bill 1533. That was the State Fire Marshal's Office bill. that would have allowed some inspections in lieu of requiring review and approval of plans. That's been taken off notice in the House, so that doesn't appear to be moving. And then that's House Senate Bill 1672, House Bill 1726 has already been mentioned by our society representatives. Don Baltimore mentioned the Right to Earn a Living Act. That's House Bill 2201, Senate Bill 2469. It has passed as amended in the Senate, still in committee in the House, but it's been recommended for passage. And as amended, it would require licensing authorities to submit entry regulations to the government operations committees by the end of the year. The committees would then issue a joint report containing findings and recommendations by January the 1st, 2018, and it also establishes review of regulations as part of the sunset review process. And the purpose is to ensure that all regulations are necessary to protect the public and don't unnecessarily inhibit competition or deny entry into a profession. And the way it works is the government operations committees may request the amendment or repeal of a regulation. If agencies do not comply with that request, they could face suspension of their rulemaking authority, I guess, unless they have perhaps a good reason for not complying with that request that they can justify. But that's essentially what that would establish as it's been amended thus far.
Questions on that from anybody? All right, next one, please.
And finally is our comity statute, House Bill 2569, Senate Bill 2534. That amends the comity statute for architects, where if they have the NCARB certificate, then the board can accept them for licensure in Tennessee, even if their qualifications don't perfectly align with those in our regulations and laws. And I mentioned to you previously that the appropriations bill does earmark $350,000 for our grants program once again. And Ashley mentioned something about, do you want me to mention that now? Or? Okay, never mind. That's it.
Thank you, John. Any other questions before we finalize this? All right, thank you very much. Next item is Engineering Committee report, and I will give that. We reviewed 4 applications, and all of those were turned over to Dr. Smith for further evaluation of academic issues. We also had some discussion on our Southern Zone meeting, as John mentioned, and he had some information on it, but the attendance was well. There were, somewhere I wrote down some notes. Let me make sure. Where are my notes? Here we go. One of the things that may come up is we may go along with the architects finally on the calendar date of continuing education when, you know, what freezes over. But no, that was one of the discussion points that we had, right, on continuing education. There's also a possible new position in NCEES that they were looking at as part of the discussion. Overall, I don't think there was anything groundbreaking that came from our NCEES meeting. No terrible things, but I do want to compliment all of our staff. I think Wanda went on the General Jackson, right, floated down the river a little bit. Wanda was there helping, obviously, in both. All of these were helping at registration. Francis was there, and others were back kind of taking care of the office. And then John was giving us regular schedule updates to make sure that for those that did not know how to read their agenda, they could see what they're supposed to be doing in the next 10 minutes. But it was a well-run meeting, and it was well attended, and a lot of compliments from the other Southern Zones. And next Southern Zone meeting is scheduled for St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to video conference that one, because our guess is we will not be as well attended as this one was. But good job, John. Good job, staff. Thank you all for putting in extra time and making us all look good. And whoever had the little bottles of Jack Daniels in the bags, there was a comment that needed to be a little bit more.
Mr. Chairman, I thought that was called Coke. it's cough syrup or something.
It was cough syrup, is exactly what it was.
I want to kind of probably add on to what your comment is. Since Casey's in the room here, there was I can't remember, John, I don't know who reported that they will talk about the energy engineers profession has been discussed quite a bit too, so we need to keep on following what's going on. Thank you for sharing those information to the committee yesterday. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Ricky.
We had some discussion that of the general nature that the meetings allow us to see where more of the states are in terms of their rules and regulations, and we recognize that there's some value in the states getting in line in terms of regulatory boards. If you're not out in left field, you're maybe less apt legally to have a problem. So that's one reason we're looking at bringing our continuing education in line. And there's also the topic of we have a 12-year exemption for taking the FE test, where if you have 12 years of experience, you don't have to take the FE test. And that sounds like that is a little, there was sentiment that some of the states don't feel like you ought to have any exemptions to taking the FE test. So we pointed that towards discussing that at the fall retreat. The other thing to mention is the PE test is moving towards being computerized. The FE test is now, but and that we think may change the nature of the PE test. But I think the first is slated for 2018, something like that.
Chemical and nuclear exams are going then.
We think it might allow for a more practice-based exam as opposed to kind of an academic multiple choice type exam.
All right, that's the engineering committee report. Grants committee.
Well, we met this morning and had a discussion about our surplus funds and how we'd like to use them. And in talking with John, based on what the finance department would like for us to do is to try to use up some of the surplus funds that we have now. So what the grants committee would like to recommend is that we spend our additional $40,000 this year that was not used with the original grants appropriation, because we'd worked through our math formula that Mr. Lim put together for special projects, and then sent out an RFP asking for projects from the various universities to see if they have a project that we could spend this money on, which I'm sure they do. Then next year, and this was brought up by John, so don't throw darts at me, okay? That we take another $150,000 and use them for special projects. Stay with our initial grant appropriations, but then take the extra $150,000 that out of the $200,000 that we have and use it for special projects, which will give us an opportunity this year to kind of test the waters with the $40,000, then have feedback on how the projects went, and spend an additional amount of money the following year. So, also, I wanted to show you all, if you're not a graduate of the University of Tennessee, you did not get this. They are celebrating their 50th anniversary for the College of Architecture and Design. This is a 3D model that the students helped make, and it is full scale. I'll send this around, with Oak Ridge National Laboratories. So funding special projects like this allows the students to think outside the box and to work with professionals in the field. And so I feel like this is important that we support this type of research and development, and to expand our students' horizons, because they are our future. And so our committee would like to recommend that we spend $40,000 this year on a special project, or as many as we can, and then next year appropriate or ask for more appropriations of our surplus funds.
I would like to add to her comment, the special projects has to use 3 of the professions on the board. So it would be a combination of engineering, architecture, landscape architecture, or interior design, any 3 of those as a minimum project, because I think we need to facilitate our students really understanding that there is a lot of work between the different professions.
And we are also suggesting that smaller colleges work with other universities and be able to collaborate together. So Chris had brought up a project they're working on in Honduras this morning before the meeting, and how they're working with Vanderbilt. So Lipscomb and Vanderbilt are working together to go to Honduras to work on a project. So those types of things we could help, with their expenses, and so it's an opportunity for us to collaborate. So.
All right. Any questions for the Grants Committee? Other comments? All right, thank you very much. Good report.
We need to vote.
Oh, you need to did you make a motion?
Yes. Well, I made a recommendation from the committee. So
Okay, well,
that
since it
requires-
came from a committee, it
Yeah.
doesn't need a second, so we do have a motion that we take the $40,000, make sure I got it, $40,000 and apply it to special projects, correct? And then next year you'll make another motion on that, okay? So we do have that motion, again, doesn't need a second. Is there any discussion? No discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? And the ayes have it. Thank you, Susan. Next thing is unfinished business, and John, you've got action items, I believe.
Correct. That's on page 33 or 36 on your iPads. These are action items from the February 2016 meeting. Under my name, you'll notice contact the Japan PEFE Examiners Council regarding establishment of a licensing agreement. Have not done that yet, but that should have a report on that for the June meeting. For Susan, she has sent me some information to send to the deans in advance of our meeting with the educators in October of this year. Information for them to provide on how grant funds are being utilized. So I will be submitting that to the deans when I send out the invitations for that meeting. And she has also been working on her social media ethics article as well. I've received that from her. Of course, the Grants Committee met this morning, so they're working on their charge. And then under several items under legal counsel, so I'll hand that over to Ben.
With regard to the first item, for the action item for legal counsel, it was with regard to research and recommendation as to professional corporations issuing shares of stock. We reviewed the relevant statutes under Tennessee Code with regard to professional corporations. They, in essence, state that they defer to the regulatory body and its statutes as to whether or not it permits shares to be issued under that particular profession. We do not have such a statute in our code with regard to the Architects and Engineers Examiners Board, and therefore it's a legal recommendation that we could not permit these professional corporations to issue shares. The proposed rule changes approved at the February meeting are currently in the routing process internally within the building. Yes,
Let me
sir.
stop you real quick. Is that something that we need to vote on in any way, or do we need to, how do we follow up with that? Because I believe it came
Professional
from.
corporation?
Well, it came from a letter or request to the staff, did it not? So you're just going to follow up with a letter?
We can just follow up on it for you.
Okay, I just want to make sure that there's no action that we need.
And I did request some additional information from the firm that contacted me, but I have not received any further information from them on it.
Yes, sir.
Say that our statutes don't permit or prohibit.
There is the professional corporation statute defers to the professional board statutes as to whether or not there's a statute specifically permitting a professional corporation of that particular profession to issue shares. We do not have that statute, and therefore we could not. That legally you cannot have a professional corporation as architects or engineers, landscape, interior designers that would be able to issue shares. It's not legally permissible.
To issue shares at all.
To a non-licensee.
To a non-licensed.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow how if you don't mention it, it would prohibit doing that.
Because the professional corporation statute, which permits professional corporations to be formed within the state of Tennessee, states that only if there is a specific statute under the regulatory board may that particular corporation issue shares to a non-licensee.
Okay, great, thank you.
And there is no statute. I know it's kind of
Got it. That
no,
explains
because
it.
there's nothing there.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. on
No,
that
that's
one.
all
I
right.
just want to make sure we were following up.
The proposed rule changes are currently being routed through the building. After they are approved through this building, they'll go to the Attorney General's office for pre-review, to the Governor's office, and then back to the Attorney General's office for constitutionality before they're posted at the Secretary of State. The next two items are pertaining to kind of the FAQs and the reference manual additions. And right now, we are in discussions with administration and legal review as to what we're going to be able to do with both of those things. So those are still pending.
Any other questions for Ben, please? Anybody? All right, thank you very much for getting that first one knocked out, and then
Thank
we'll wait on the others as they
Yes,
go
sir.
through. All right. Are you on grants? Have we addressed Susan? We've got her out of the way.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I want to ask Susan a question. Susan, on that newsletter, you're going to talk about social media. I would assume that you could probably point them back to our professional conduct section, right? Okay.
I'm going to.
And
It's in there, so.
it's really troubling lately, some of the things that come to engineering committee, some of the languages been used and some of the way people conduct themselves professional to our staff too. Thank you. You gonna read that to me, sir?
No, this is a copy of it, so.
You
I
wanna
actually
read
have 3 references on articles that I read when I started writing this. What includes a Sanford Encyclopedia on Philosophy and the article Social Networking and Ethics. And it's a compilation of various psychologists and researchers on social media. And then I've got one on 23 types of social media sites and then one on 6 types of social media sites. And so I referenced mainly what happened with our board with the member that used photographs without permission and basically stated that we must have written permission for the owners or managers to take photos of the project. We also must have written permission to post the photos, and that the client must grant use of their name if you put it on the photos. So just trying to make sure people understand you can't just put something on House or Facebook or whatever without written permission. And then we're going to reference from our ethics portion, and as some of y'all know, the ransomware virus hit our computers, so everything in my A&E folder is gone. So anyway, we need to pull up our ethics reference and put in here along with the fines that where they start. So anyway.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, action items are complete. And I assume, being the reference manual and expert testimony policy, that was under action item?
It was there's a lot of FAQs in the reference manual, including the kind of QBS and this expert testimony question. So that's all kind of all together in one from the action item. So yeah, all that's still going. We're discussing with administration and upper management and legal as to what the next steps are with that stuff.
Okay, good deal. Good. Okay. So we'll go on to our next item with new business. John, 2017 legislative proposals, please.
Okay, just had a couple of things I was going to mention to you that might be possibilities for legislative proposals for next year. Still in preliminary stages with this because it's not quite time to file those yet, but every year the deadline kind of moves up. So we're just trying to get ahead of the game here. In the past several years, we've submitted a proposal to amend the statute for architects and landscape architects regarding exam credit. As you'll remember, our statute states that candidates for those professions retain credit for any parts of the examination passed and may, at the board's discretion, be permitted to have unlimited retakes of any parts of the examination failed. So it just says they will retain credit for any parts passed, which in the past has always been interpreted to mean they retain credit indefinitely. That's the way that that's been interpreted and applied. And upon the advice of legal counsel in the past, we've submitted legislative proposals to amend that to state that candidates will retain credit for any parts of the exam passed in accordance with the policies established by NCARB and CLARB. NCARB sets a limit of 5 years on the validity of exam results. Once you pass a section of the exam, it's valid for 5 years, at which point you would then have to retake that section if you haven't passed all sections of the exam. and CLARB, they don't have a policy quite like that, but they do disallow exam credit from the old UNE exam. I think that was issued up to the early 90s, that those exams are no longer valid. So most organizations that do have some kind of limit on how long exam results are valid for multi-part exams. NCAAS has a similar policy for the structural engineering exam, which is a 2-part lateral vertical exam. Each result is only valid for 5 years. You have to pass both sections within 5 years to fully pass the structural exam, since it's a 2-part exam. So that's a pretty common thing. The purpose being that it's felt that exams change over time, codes and standards change, and so you need to ensure that the exam they pass is up to date, essentially. They may have passed an exam 30 years ago that may not really reflect the current state of practice. So that's the idea behind it. Just wanted to verify if that's something you're still interested in requesting. We've requested it, I think, for 3 or 4 years, and it's never been picked up by the administration, but we can certainly still continue to submit that. I think you can definitely make the case that it's in the public's best interest that they not retain credit indefinitely for exams, but just wanted to throw that.
And that's for NCARB, right?
For architects and landscape architects only,
So,
right?
do you want that to come as a recommendation from their committee?
Not necessarily. It's been discussed previously, so I just wanted to see if you still wanted us to submit that. I don't know that we have to have a motion necessarily at this point, but.
John, I think we should go ahead and do it, because then we're in line with what NCARB and CLARB are trying to do. And I think that, and I feel that it avoids any conflicts that may arise between our statutes and those of CLARB and NCARB.
It does create a problem for architect exam applicants if they, let's say it takes them 10 years to pass all sections of the exam. They can get a license in Tennessee, fine, as long as they pass all divisions, that they're granted a license. But if it's not compliant with NCARB's policy, they can never become NCARB certified, which puts them at a disadvantage. They basically can't practice outside Tennessee. They can't achieve comity or reciprocity licensure anywhere else, because no other state is going to recognize their exam results since they don't have an NCARB certificate. So I always recommend to applicants, if they call us, or make them aware that your results are fine for licensure in Tennessee, but just be aware that you're not going to be eligible for an NCARB certificate, which is going to pose problems if you need to practice out of state.
One other question about it. What about on the engineering side? Is there a time limit? You have the FE, that's the first one, you pass that. But then when you go on to take your PE exam, is there a time limit on that, or?
It's a 1-part exam.
It's
it
1
doesn't.
part.
The only exception's the structural, like I mentioned. It's a 2-part exam, so they do have a 5-year rule for that exam, but not for the other disciplines. Okay. So I guess hearing no objection, we'll just continue to submit that as we've done in the past. Y'all have approved that in the past. And the other is a new proposal. The statute for architects, landscape architects, and engineers states, either specifically or it's strongly inferred, I guess you could say, that the board has to authorize candidates to sit for the exams, which is the procedure we currently employ. It's different for interior designers, but for those 3 professions, they have to file an application with us in order to sit for an exam. The board has to authorize them to sit, at which point we notify the appropriate national council, and then they can schedule their exams. We notify them that they're approved to sit, which is a kind of a burdensome process. It's more of for the architects and landscape architect candidates, because they allow early testing it's really a rubber stamp process. All we do is make sure they have the right education, and boom, they're approved to sit. And NCARB and CLARB already verify that anyway, so it's sort of duplicating their effort. NCARB, and I believe CLARB as well, they have a process where candidates can just go directly to NCARB or CLARB and take their exams. After they pass the exams and meet the other requirements, then they apply to the states for licensure. For NCARB, that's called direct registration, and a lot of states employ that. Louisiana just comes to mind. I know there's a lot of states that use direct registration where they don't see candidates until they've passed all their licensure exams. So the thinking is, since our board and I think surveyors, we're the only two programs in the department that still authorize applicants to sit for exams. We would like to introduce legislation to amend that where we're no longer required to do that. Candidates are no longer required to apply with us to sit for exams, so that they can go directly to NCARB or CLARB or NCEES, take their exams. Once they pass all divisions, then they would apply to the state for a license, at which point you would evaluate their experience. We would confirm that they have the proper education, et cetera, that they've passed all the exams. And really that relieves a lot of burden for us, because currently we are processing all these applications for candidates who may never pass the exams. The pass rates vary from like 50 to 70% on the different exams. So a lot of candidates either never pass, or it takes them sometimes several years to pass. And in the meantime, we have to maintain their records and update their address information. They move around pretty frequently, et cetera. So it would relieve us of a lot of administrative burden if we moved away from that process to a direct registration process where we don't see them until they've already met the requirements, at which point you would review them. So I see a lot of head nodding, so it sounds like y'all think that's a good way to go.
Can I make one comment?
Yeah.
Interior design has not had that process, and we lose the students after graduation. And there's no way to track them because we don't have a database of individuals. And now that we have gone to an early examination, we have that database now. I'm not saying that y'all don't need to do it, but I can tell you from our side, it never helped us keep track of people and keep them in the system and be able to get them to join the professional organizations or to finish their exams. So that's just a different side of the whole process, okay? So.
I've got a couple quizzical looks from my ride over here from the engineers. I think it's probably something we as an engineering committee probably need to discuss a little bit more and understand. I know we talked about it a little bit yesterday, and we had a couple committee members obviously that were not there. I think we probably ought to vet this a little bit more. In concept it sounds well, but I don't know if we lose or gain anything that we might not want to lose or gain from this. Does that sound legitimate to everybody? I just want to talk about it a little bit more.
About it in June.
That's fine. That's perfect. We need to vet this a little bit further, I believe. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, while we're on
That's
the
it.
subject, it was good timing on this because the applications that we just reviewed for the exam, there was a young man in there that we had approved in 15, and now we have to approve him again. I don't understand what that process. Did he
I
not?
would assume his original application may have expired, and so he had to.
So he
reapply.
didn't take the exam or something, or
Or didn't pass all
Didn't
the
pass.
divisions. I'm not familiar. But see, the application's only valid for 5 years.
Yeah.
So if it may be a case where he filed his application 5 years ago and it's since expired, and he's had to reapply for authorization to sit for the
So
exam.
this was 2015. His previously approved one was.
Have to look at it. and
I'm
see.
just curious. Well, why it was a year? Did you see that one?
Yeah, I saw that one, and I went back through it, and I was kind of scratching my head, because,
I don't know, just, hey,
At it and see.
fodder for the fire. That's all I got. Thank you.
Fine. Good deal. Yeah, if you can just go ahead and add that to the engineering committee discussion for June, that would be good, just so we can flesh that out a little bit more for our purposes.
Sure thing.
Right, anything else, John?
Oh, that's all for legislative issues.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is a report by Jerry Headley on the SC NCARB Educators and Practitioners Conference. Jerry?
one thing, do we want to take a 5-minute break at this point, and then I get into it? Because I'm going to take about 3 hours.
If you take 3 hours, you will probably get cut off way before that. You've got like 3.5 minutes.
For your report.
For your report.
Yeah.
I'm trying to set a record here, and I'm not going to let you get in my way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, as I attended the Educators and Practitioners Conference down in NOLA again, and this time, last time I went, they broke it up, part of it on Saturday afternoon, part of it on Sunday morning. This was all in one day, and it worked out well. We had good attendance. It was held at, Tulane, right? Yeah, I think so. The School of Architecture there. Interesting campus. We had the first session was on the evolving ARE and IDP and future initiatives. And what NCARB has been working on is one, they've reduced number of IDP hours, but they are trying, and what they're doing is bringing what is required under IDP in line with how they've restructured the ARE to be more on the practice, the total practice side. So they're working on it. I believe it's going to take another year for all of that to come about, but it was very good. The other one, and part of that too, when they were shown, they gave kind of a demonstration in the new ARE, that 5.0, and they were shown a question, and the way they've approached it, they had a small wall section, exterior wall, and what you had to do was identify where a vapor barrier was going to be placed. And seeing how they were doing it, I felt comfortable with it, because then unless it may seem like a simple little thing where it put the vapor barrier, but depending on where your location is, that can differ. So it was good to see that, and I'm starting to feel more comfortable with the ARE 5.0, which I believe actually goes into effect next year. Is it, John, or is it this year that they're going to bring the ARE 5 online?
I think it's unveiled later this year.
Yeah. So then we ended up, the next session was a presentation by NAB, and they went through, they gave an overview, the what they go through in the accreditation process for the various schools of architecture. And again, that was good to see what they're trying to do, because when I went to the I think it was at Orleans at the NCARB annual, they had NAB had was up there making a presentation, and you kind of scratch your head sometimes because you don't know what all's involved. So that was good too. Then in the afternoon, they went into a notes. Yeah. Then in the afternoon, there was a panel discussion called Emerging Professional Preparedness. They had a student, a recently licensed architect, and an architect on the panel, and it was a question answer. And the architect on the panel, he was out of, I believe, Montgomery. And the recently licensed architect worked for his firm. But in the back and forth, it was interesting because the licensed architect had explained that, how their office works with interns, and say that you're a student and you're able to work for the firm over a summer. They like to have those people back, and then if they come back after graduation, what they do to nurture them through the IDP process and also the exam process so that they can keep them. And then one architect out of Louisville stood up and he said, well, this is what our office does, and it got it got everybody's attention. He said that they have a house up there in Louisville, and their interns can stay there. So they're providing housing while they're working, and which helps keep that person involved, and also that person could be a future permanent member of their design firm. So there were some good comments. And then the other one was the integrated path to licensure, where they're combining the IDP and exam process as part of it. And what came out of it, and I have a little pamphlet on what SCAD is doing. SCAD was one of the original, I believe, 12, and I'll pass that around. Rick, if you can. And it has a chart in there about their program. But the main part of the integrated path to licensure is that it's not for everybody, because when you go into it, you're not only doing your college courses, doing that, then it's in the later years that you get into the IDP, more of the IDP and the exam process. So it's going to take somebody that is very dedicated and wants to be able to, as I say, put his shingle out after he graduates. And they also mentioned during that there are 12 that initially signed up for it, and there are another 14 colleges that are going to be signing up for that as well. But, again, as I say, it's not for everybody, because you're going to be, your life is totally dedicated to it. So not many are going to be doing it. And I believe my own thought is that the colleges, if a person's going to try and do that, they're going to be doing some screening as well. The second college that was there was from North Carolina, I believe Clemson, and their program is similar to SCAD, but SCAD is the Savannah College of Arts and Design. So
Thank you.
Just to let you know.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
And NAB is the National Association of Architectural
National Architectural Accreditation Board.
Accreditation Board. Good. But and there was good interaction amongst all the people that were there, and students as well. It would have been nice to see some more architectural students there, because it was open. They could have come in and listened, because if they sat there and were hearing our discussions, it helps open up their eyes as to what they're going to be having to look at as they pursue a career in architecture. That was it for that's my report on that.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Any questions? I will point out that girls also may want to hang their shingle up. You just said he, so let's make sure that we give equal opportunity.
He or she can hang their shingle up.
Just want to make sure for the record
Laura
that
was here, it would be,
I'm just making sure that we stay down the path.
I will make a note to be politically correct.
Okay.
Inclusive too.
All right. All right, thank you, Jerry. Next is John.
Yes, the regional summit for NCARB was held in Savannah last month. And the report's on page 39 or page 42 on your iPads, the written report. I'll just bring a few things to your attention. One of the resolutions that was presented would establish a mutual recognition arrangement with Australia and New Zealand. They already have an agreement with Canada, which we are a signatory to, so this is a new agreement that they've been working on, and they've studied the licensure requirements in Australia and New Zealand and feel that they are rigorous and standardized, just like the process here in the U.S. And so they're going to ask, if the resolution passes at the annual meeting, which I imagine that it will, they're going to be asking member boards to sign this agreement, and it will become effective on January 1st, 2017. Another resolution is changing the broadly experienced architect program for individuals who may not meet the standard requirements for NCARB certification. This would provide a pathway for them to obtain NCARB certification. And it's just eliminating that BEA, broadly experienced architect designation, and requiring the experience and licensure that you see outlined in the written report. I won't go into the details of that, but you can review that. And the last three resolutions on that list, Resolution H, I, and J, have to do with elimination of the title intern. Apparently, architectural interns don't like to be referred to as interns, so NCARB is going through a process to remove all references to the title intern. The intern development program is going to be referred to as the Architectural Experience Program. The internship committee will be renamed the Experience Committee, and they're going to remove references to the titles intern architect and architectural intern in the model law and model regulations. In our conference, the Southern Conference, a lot of concern was expressed about that they're basically, NCARB really needs to provide some guidance on what term should replace the title intern. Nobody really has a good answer for that. What do we call them? Some say emerging professionals, but there's really no consensus on that.
John, just follow up on that. At the educators conference, that came up, and the consensus out of that was that leave it at intern. Doctors do an internship, leave it at intern. Those individuals don't like it, hey, live with it.
That was the feeling in our region, the Southern Conference, but I don't know if other regions expressed that same concern. It was indicated to us that they did not, that we were the only region that had concerns about it, but.
Attitudes like that are not nurturing our young flowers, and I think you need to understand that we're trying to grow a garden here. Okay, John.
Robert, I had to go through it, and I was no blooming flower at the time, so if I could live through it, so can.
And one more thing I'll point out, there was several jurisdictions that noted that use of the term interior architecture by interior design programs continues to be a problem. There were several states in our southern region that indicated that was still an issue. So just wanted to mention that. That's it.
All right, thanks. Any questions for John?
Make a comment.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
John, in regard to the interior architecture, there are future programs that are going to make a master's degree in interior architecture. I'm not going to say who because they haven't launched it yet, but I'm not disagreeing with it. I think it needs to be used appropriately with an education to back it up. So I think it's a good opportunity for the two sides to come to the table and talk about it. So that's just my thought.
Thank you. Any other comments from Rick?
Auburn has a program that's interior architecture, and you have to have a degree in both. So I don't have a problem with that. If you want to be an architect, be an architect. You want to be an interior designer, be an interior designer. So it should be regulated that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm agreeing with you.
Absolutely. So.
All right. Philip, before I get to you, I had one quick thing that we added to the agenda. I'm going to go ahead and jump in the middle of that. We have standing committees, obviously, that we have, and Philip's going to present from the nominations committee. I've asked our newest member, Susan Maynor, to fill in or to take the place of our other public member, Wilson Borden, on the following 3 committees: grants to higher education, the laws and rules, as well as continuing education. And hopefully, Susan, this gives you an opportunity to kind of get your feet wet, see where everything is, and if there's another opportunity you want to try to look at in the coming thing. Susan Ballard's trying desperately to get off of every committee, so she might cut you for it or something, and see which one of you gets on one of these. But anyway, if you will go ahead and fill Wilson's time on those 3 committees, and John, I've got these written down. I'll give this back to you so you can have it for publication. So that'll fill our committees out with all of our members. Thank you for that. All right, Philip, you've got nominations, officer nominations, please.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, member of the board, the nomination committee met this morning, a few minutes before 9 o'clock, and we have a new / officer nominated for your consideration. According to the bylaw, this is by acclamation. Currently, Susan will be then moved up from vice chair to the chair, Frank Webster from a secretary treasurer to the vice chair, and Philip Lin representing engineering to take the seat of the secretary treasurer. And this comes from a nomination committee which does not need a second.
And we don't vote on it right now anyway. It's at the next meeting, so we'll have a motion and time for discussion at the next meeting. So, but thank you for presenting that. Our last item is authorization of travel and speakers. And John, if you want to take care of that, please.
I think the only thing that we may need authorization for may be for Hal and any other board members who are participating in the ASCE event on June the 16th about decoupling. That was mentioned earlier. I think Casey mentioned that some board members, including Hal, may be asked to participate in that event. So other than that, I'm not aware of any outreach that's scheduled right now.
Comments from anybody? Any additions to that list?
I would move to authorize 1 to 2 members to attend that meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And we stand adjourned. Right? Now, after we adjourn, Susan has asked the grants committee to get together just briefly
2
to
minutes.
talk about a couple quick things.
Mr. Chairman, since we're adjourned, I've got a comment I'd like to make once we're all done. It's interesting for us.
Why don't you go ahead and make yours since they're going to kind of get together on the
Okay.
sidebar? That'd be